Welcome, everyone tuning in. It's Chris Waston, Director of Marketing for Black Male Educators Alliance. We're going to begin things kicked off with our first, live podcast, just coming to the people live and direct. So if you're seeing this, definitely want you to share this. So I'm going to bring on one of my co-hosts for today. You all know him very well, Mr. Mike Payne. Also, if you see this, please share it out. Thank you all for joining us. There's the man right there, Mike. How you doing?
What's up, Chris? How you feeling, man?
I'm good, bro. I'm good, man. It's always good to connect. Getting ready to, bring a live version of the podcast here to the show, and that's always a great thing. I see our special guest is in the building. So, Nicole, you can request to join, and I will get you on here as well. But Mike, we do it, man. We like to check in, so I figure we just go ahead. Let me also address this. I'm obviously not Dr. Lewis. Some people may be tuning in looking for Doc. I'm going to be in for Doc today and kind of handling the live portion, jumping back on my boy Mike. We were the original host of the BMEA podcast.
Yeah.
My boy. So Mike, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good, man. Good week, good work week. Had homecoming recently. That was amazing. See all my old friends and colleagues and go back to school. But everything's good, man. I'm doing really good, man. How you feeling?
I'm good. Actually, I'm bringing on Nicole right now. I'm doing good, man. It's been a long week. It's going by really quickly. So that's like the gift and the curse of it all, that the week is going by, pretty fast. And here it is, Thursday. Got a good game coming on tonight. We got Nicole in the building. Nicole, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Chris? Hey, Mike.
Hey.
Good.
So, Nicole, for our followers who may not know you, can you just give them a brief introduction of who you are and the work that you do?
Yeah, my name is Nicole Thompson. I'm the founder of GOAT Educators, and my mission is to heal student trauma with love. I'm a retired school psychologist, an author of Reach to Teach, a mentor, and education consultant.
Great. I got the Reach to Teach in the mail on the way, so I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, and I wanted to get it out earlier, but I had stuff going on. I'm like, Mike is going to get me.
Nah, it's all good. I got a couple of flights coming up. I'm going to read it on the plane, so no, I'm good. I got you. So our conversation on our last podcast, we were talking about post-traumatic slave syndrome, right? And how, like, just this concept of how trauma is passed down, especially the traumatic event of slavery to all Black Americans and Black people, affects children today, and how we don't really address that. And so I was thinking of telling Chris, I'm like, Nicole does this work right now with trauma, right? So just thinking about that book and the work that you're doing, like, can you talk a little bit more about, like, what your thoughts on how, like, PTSS affects students today in the schools?
So from my experience, I worked in a large comprehensive urban high school in Philly for several years. And I noticed that a lot of the students had PTSD. It just wasn't diagnosed. But you could tell by the different behaviors that they had going on, and, just by them missing school, being transient, just different red flags that I knew as, a practicing psychologist, that this wasn't right. And that was one of the reasons why I left, because, I was there doing all the testing, all the placing, and all of the things. But when you really think about it, we don't properly serve the students that are in special education, especially in the district that I was in. I can't speak for all districts, but I just felt like I was a part of the problem at that point, because I was just diagnosing and not really addressing the root of the problem. And we never really talked about the root of the problem. We always wanted to suspend the kids and all of the other punitive measurements and all. And we never wanted to discuss how the teacher played a role in the behaviors escalating, or anything else that's really important in trying to help the students.
That's deep. So, Nicole, let me ask you this. So what about, you have students, teachers, right? I know we got a lot of teachers tapping in. I appreciate everyone tapping in the comments as well. I got my man from Liberation Lab in the building. Let me ask you this, though. So if you're a teacher and you see these behaviors, you're trying to get through, how the pressure's on the teacher, you're trying to get through content, you're trying to have maybe an orderly environment, Like, what's some of your suggestions on things that they can do to deal with some of the trauma that students are, entering into the school with? What can a teacher do in that position?
I always say prioritize relationships. If we prioritize relationships from day one and keep that a priority throughout the school year, we won't see as many of the behaviors that we see. A lot of the behaviors come from being misunderstood and not being seen and wanting the attention, but the only attention that they get is negative attention. So, if that's the attention that they're going to get, then those are the behaviors that they're going to keep demonstrating, which is why it's so important, I believe, for all educators to be trauma informed, because not only do you learn about the traumas that your students have, you also start to learn about the traumas that you and your family have and your loved ones and everything else. And then you start to become aware that, hey, maybe I shouldn't take some of these behaviors personally, because it's not really about me. It's about what they've been through, and they're reacting off of that.
No, absolutely. And even going back to our conversation about PTSS, like not understanding the historical context of Black people or understanding Black culture, there are a lot of, like, oftentimes you can see teachers butting heads with kids and just kind of like reinstilling the trauma or creating more trauma, right? Like Doc was mentioning earlier in his podcast or his show about like how school is not a safe place, like emotionally, for children, right? And so we're asking them to do well and do these things like robots, but nobody's really addressing their emotions or feelings. And they're like growing human beings, like trying to learn the world. And I just don't feel like we address it. And so your book, right, I'm looking forward to reading. You talk a little bit about that, right? Reach to Teach. What is the Reverse the Adverse plan? If you could like summarize that for us.
So Reverse the Adverse is actually a professional development that I do for schools, districts, and organizations. And it's based on the framework Reverse. It's just a play on reversing the adverse effects of childhood experiences. And the framework is R, which is reflect, because I believe that in order to do real trauma-informed work, you have to start with yourself. You can't think that you're going to go out there with the mind state that, oh, I'm about to save these kids. No, because if you have that in your mind, you're starting off on the wrong foot already. Then the second part of the framework is educate, where I just give, like the real trauma that urban students are going through that no one talks about, the generational trauma, the PTSD, the trauma that we have, from being passed on to slavery that no one ever addressed or gave us any type of therapy for. Then we go into visualize, where I explain the different types of behaviors that you can expect when a student is going through different types of trauma. We can't always expect the students just to do this thing. Oh, this kid is doing this behavior, so they must be traumatized. No, it's much more than that. And everyone has their own reactions to trauma. It's not always out in the open and overt. Sometimes, it's the quiet kid that's getting straight A's, that's always aiming for perfection. So I go through, the different behaviors and visualize. Then I go back to empathize, because, it's really important that we draw a thick line in between empathy and sympathy, because I believe when teachers are sympathetic towards their students, they start to lower their expectations, and then they start to, do things where the students are going to meet them. So if the expectation is that Johnny is bad, every day Johnny is going to come show his behind and prove that he is bad. Then I go on to reach, where I give different strategies, easy strategies. And these are all practical things that you could reach your students every single day. So if they're having a bad day or if they're going through something, they won't feel ashamed or embarrassed to come to you and let you know, hey, I have this going on. I might be, acting a little different, or, just forgive me for this day. Just for them to come voice that to us is really important. Then I go to strategize, which is where I give you a whole bunch of different strategies where you can use in the classroom. And I end it with empathize. And I hope I said everything. Empower. I end it with empower. Yes. Because, it's important to empower the students. If they're not empowered, you can talk until you're blue in the face, and it's just not going to work.
Right. just gave us a whole PD session in a couple of minutes.
You did. No, so I
know.
hope people listening, they
Hey,
give you a call. We're gonna make sure you put your tag on and give you a call, because you're absolutely right. I deal with teachers daily, and I'm gonna let Chris ask this question, but it's hard to explain, especially to my white teachers, being real. It's hard to explain to them what it means to build a relationship with our kids. And like, you say those words, but it's not clicking. And I'm watching them, and it's just like, you're not treating them like a human being, and you're not trying to like bring them closer to you. And I feel like that everything you described, it almost sounds like common sense, like with someone that you care about, but it's not happening in our schools. And so like it's so important. I think we gotta lead with that almost before you can get to academics. But go ahead, Chris. I'm on a tangent.
Nah. I mean, no, you're speaking facts, bro. I think it's like there just has to be this intentionality of creating space for this stuff to occur. And I think if a teacher or a leader doesn't have the right lens, then they just kind of overlook it and think it's just kids being kids, or you got some kids who struggle, some who don't. But Nicole, I want to go a little deeper. And also I want to give a shout out to everyone tapping in with us too. See, we got Sarah, my boy Lonzo, Stacy. I can't name out everybody. My girl Jay Coop in here. Thank y'all. But I want to just say this. What can students do? So we talked about, how the approach from a leader, how you would help them to see this and help their staff. But for students that may be in school, they may be struggling. What are ways that they can support or deal with trauma in an effective, productive way for themselves, or maybe advocate for themselves? In case you got any people here listening in who have some young people that they know dealing with things, but they still have to show up and go to school each day. What's some advice that you would give for the students to be able to kind of cope and get through and thrive still in school?
I say find a person in the building that you're really comfortable with. I had a lot of good relationships with the students, and sometimes I was the only one in the building that they could actually come to and really have a talk with. So even if it's not your teacher, it could be a counselor, the assistant principal, whoever it is that you're close to, because we all know that it only really does take that one adult to keep a child pushing through school when they're having hard times or whatever the case. So just find one adult that you feel really comfortable with and opening up to. And sometimes you could open up to them. I know a lot of students opened up to me and told me things that I didn't even want to hear, that I didn't ask to hear. But, apparently it was something that they needed to get off of their chest, and they felt comfortable enough telling me. So just find that one adult and build a relationship with them. And then, most of the times, if you have that one adult in the school, when they know something is going on, they reach out to their colleagues. Hey, such and such is having a bad day. Look out for that kid.
Yeah. I feel like, and Chris can speak to that too, man. As a black male in the schools, and like not there being too many of us, we oftentimes feel like that guy for so many of our children, especially our boys. Shout out to Jalen and Lonzo, I've seen in the chat. Like we make such a strong impact on them, and that's why we need so many more brothers in education. But what were you gonna say, Chris?
Yeah, I was gonna add on to that. Like I think something I always encourage for teachers, and that's to me one of the best parts, is that real connection you can make. I mean, the content is cool, seeing like the light bulbs go off, but like you have such a power and so much potential in what you can do. Because like you said, Nicole, you could be like that one person that really changes a person's whole outlook on their life, their future, just because you listen, just because you get them some advice, just because you're willing to go beyond just the curriculum or the normal expectations or your role as a teacher. If you like really just build that true relationship, I mean, it can last for a lifetime. Even some of the people tuning in are former students of ours who are adults now. And you said we still got a connection with them. I got students that are in college I still connected with, and it's because it wasn't because of what I taught them necessarily, but it was because of the relationship I built in addition to my job as a teacher, because I took that time. So I thought what you said was really spot on and something that I could relate to. But go ahead, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Nicole.
No, I always like to say, because a lot of times educators want like this overcomplicated clinical answer on what to do with students when they're traumatized. And that's just not the case. One of my favorite quotes is by Dr. Bruce Perry, and he's a leading trauma child psychiatrist. And he says the most powerful form of therapy is human love. We have to forget about all of the clinical stuff and everything and really just get back to the basics and let the kids know that we love them. A lot of times the students don't feel that love and don't get that love anywhere in the building. So when they have it, they can feel it and they cling on to it and they really do cherish it. Because like you were saying, Chris, I have a lot of adult students that I still, you know, give advice to, or they're making major life decisions like getting married and things of that sort. And they always reach out to me, ask me for advice, ask me to come. So, you know, you're really forging those relationships for a lifetime because they remember those type of connections.
No, that's so true. Like, and Chris said it before. I think my impact on my students was more about the relationship than it was the academics, right? If they did well, or you know, or they're still reaching out to us, like we made a larger impact on their life. And to that point, like they'll listen to you now. So like we were all educated, we're all smart people, or well intended. So now you have kids who are willing to do well because they trust you and they love you and they know you love them. But I feel like in schools, it's like an energy around like, oh, you can't like love the kid, you just got to do your job. And you get a lot of that. Like people are like, oh, you just love them, you know, you can't really do your job. But any other place with all these children, like it can't feel like an office space. It can't feel like a corporation. And I feel like that's where our schools are. And so like at BMEA, we're trying to find solutions. We're trying to change things. So like my last question to you would be, not in a perfect world, but in the future, right? Let's say we organize, get ourselves together. Like, what specific changes would you make to how the schools are structured now so that there is more trauma informed, so there are more, you know what I'm saying, opportunities for kids to feel this love?
I mean, in the perfect world, or like you said, in the future, all schools would be trauma informed and all schools would take that approach, because otherwise you have a chunk of students not learning. And we're pushing for inclusion, but we're still excluding that huge group of students. And also just the curriculum. The curriculum is whack. I mean, it is what it is. So we need to switch up the curriculum and start teaching relevant stuff that the students actually want to learn, and that is going to be relevant to their outside lives when they're adults. My kids, I talk to my kids a lot, and my two oldest girls, they just got out of high school. And my one daughter was telling me, like, you know, I don't even want to be here. The stuff that I'm learning, most of it I'm not going to use as soon as I graduate. And that's the attitude that a lot of the students have, because the information is so boring. And like you said, they run it like a corporation, and they're just losing all of the students' interest. Kids are naturally curious. In school, how it is right now beats that curiosity out of them.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And then you can see when they lose it. Like you can see it elementary to high school, you can see where they lose it. And I do believe there needs to be more psychologists in the building, right? More therapists in the building. Like if therapy, mental health is so important to us, like as a race of people, like human beings, like then we need to have that in schools available to children too, right? So what I'm thinking, and Chris, I'll let you go too. What I'm thinking is like just as we have teachers, we need to have therapists for our kids, right? And especially coming from the historical context of slavery and all this unresolved trauma that we have inherently, that we have just really started to unpack just, you know, in the past few years, past few decades. So that's what I would say too. Just like we need to change the structure. Like we have to obviously require more funding, but this is for the betterment of society, right? More therapy, better mental health. Right, kids understanding how the brain works and how trauma works, just as they understand mathematics, right? Because mathematics is in the calculator now. So how relevant is that compared to knowing how to take care of yourself, knowing how to take care of your mental space, right? We want to prepare kids for college, but are we mentally preparing them for college? You know what I'm saying? So, but go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, good discussion. And Nicole, we're gonna let you go soon. Just got like 1 or 2 more questions for you. I want to go on this vibe. We talked about it from the, you know, what can teachers do? We talked about what can students do. Let's talk from the parents. All right, me and Mike both parents. I know we got a lot of parents looking at here, and it's tough. You know, I have 4 kids, and they all at different stages. So you definitely probably can help me out. You know what I mean? Because you know, you see your kids get stressed. You know, they deal with different things, and you know, even as a parent, because you don't really know what your kids are going through. So, like, what's their advice for parents helping their students, their own children, you know, just, you know, deal with trauma, recognize it, navigate through school with it? Just any advice for parents that you have?
So I go through the same thing with my kids, 4 of them. And they're right now, 11, 13, 19, and 20. So I just believe in normalizing your mental health. If I'm having a bad day, I let them know. If I'm stressed out, I let them know. We talk about mental health all the time. And we talk about it in different contexts, not just, what you see on TV or what they're teaching in school, because now, they're starting to talk about emotions and all. But when you normalize mental health and when you're not feeling well, your kids are going to come to you, hey, mom, I'm having a bad day. My daughters, they've come to me after breakups. Mom, I just broke up. I'm not feeling well. So when you make it normal in your house, you're comfortable talking about it, and you're comfortable just talking to your kids in general and not getting defensive and not taking things personally and not snapping out because whatever it is they're coming to you about, maybe you don't approve of. You really just got to put your ego aside and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just straight up listen. Sometimes I want to, I'm holding back, I'm biting my tongue, I'm sitting on my hands, but I really just have to listen. And then after you listen, you ask, so what made you do that? Or why are you feeling that way? You really just have to listen with no judgment, because it's just human nature. If you feel judged, you're not going to keep going back to that person to continue to get judged. So try to leave the judgment at the door.
Hey, that's a whole nother pot. That's a whole nother show.
Yeah, the parenting PD. Okay, I'm gonna have to play this back on myself. Like, you know what I mean? My wife, she does better with it. I'm sometimes the one that's kind of like, what's wrong with you? Why you, it's, I gotta get better. My kid's getting older. My oldest is 13 now, so it's like I gotta, I gotta adjust in how I approach, certain behaviors. So that was dope. That was dope. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just saying, like, the restorative practices. We preach a lot about restorative practices, and bringing it home, right, is a challenge, because it challenges a lot of like the natural biases you have or the natural things that you got from your parents, and absolutely, you know what I'm saying? It takes a lot of killing your pride and your ego to really kind of help children understand mental health, because you got to have a lot of patience with yourself and with them, and being understanding and not taking things personal, which I think is the biggest thing for parents and teachers dealing with children, is not taking stuff personal. Like, I preach that every day.
And I think allowing your kids to question you. I had to be comfortable with that, because just coming up my age, my parents didn't really allow us to question them. Like, you do it because I told you to do it. I let my children question me. And if they come up with an idea that I didn't think about, or a reason that I didn't think about, we have a conversation about that reason. And I say, okay, well, I never thought of it that way. And then maybe I'll change my mind, or maybe I won't. Sometimes they come out on top, sometimes they don't, but they know that they could always argue their case, and it's not just do as I say because I'm the adult.
And honestly, that's so important. I know we gotta let you go. That's so important, because you build an agency with kids to be able to stand up for themselves, and that's going to translate outside of just the home. And parents got to understand that, like, you trying to raise your child to be able to live in this world. If they think that they have to be submissive to, someone because they told them so, like, you're not really helping them learn their critical thinking, or, like you said, be able to stand up for themselves.
Right. And they're setting them up for a whole bunch of bad relationships in the future.
Facts.
Story.
They normalize abusive relationships. Man, look, that's another. Yeah. So no, thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us. We really appreciate it. For those of y'all who are following us, please follow GOAT Educators, Nicole Thompson. Make sure y'all buy the Reach to Teach book. Anything else you want me to celebrate, lift up for you?
I think reach it. Let us know. It's your time to shine. Let them know everything. How to book you, how to do everything.
So if you want to book me, I believe I still have the link in my link tree in my bio. It says book Reach to Teach for your school, district, or organization. And the link for the book is in my bio as well. Right now, that's all I got going on, because I got stuff going on in the background.
Yeah. Understood. Well, thanks, Nicole. We appreciate you jumping on, and we'll have you back on the show another time, hopefully very soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and I really enjoyed talking to you. And thanks to everyone that came out today to show some support.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Indeed.
Thank you.
All right, Mike. You know how we do it, man. We like to just kind of close it out. First of all, shout out to everybody for joining us. We appreciate y'all tapping in with us. But we got the next podcast coming up when, Mike? Let us know what's going on.
On the 17th, November 17th, we got the next podcast. We're going to have one of our principal fellows, Anton Horton, on the show and talk about mental wellness and all the things we're doing. And then also we're going back somewhat to this conversation around trauma and things that we need changing in the school. So it's going to be a really good, dope conversation.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. And before y'all get out of here, obviously, if you're watching this, I don't know, you may have came from Nicole's page. Make sure you follow us here on Instagram, Black Male Educators Alliance. It's going to be going live more often. But we're also on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Be everywhere. So, follow the podcast. You can listen to the audio. And we appreciate y'all tapping in. Mike, any last words before we let the people go?
I want to send my prayers and thoughts to Amari Amore's family, one of my former students. I know a lot of my students were friends of his and a lot of teachers in our community. So rest in peace to my young boy. And also just second month of school, October is the toughest month for teachers. So please keep pushing through, keep trying, reach out for help if you need it, but keep going for our kids.
Yes, indeed. And on that note, we're out of here. It's the BMEA podcast, the IG version. We'll see you next time. Y'all take care.